What's up, YouTube? In our growing need to diversify a little bit and occasionally play some decks that aren't Death Shadow, I decided to do a voiceover league I played last night with Blue White Hammer Time. Hammer Time's a deck that played a couple leagues with. I played like an F&M or two, just borrowing someone's Hammer Time list. I haven't devoted a lot of time and effort to the deck, anything like that. But I do really like the play style of it, and I think that it does have a lot more interactions and grindability than most people think. So I just wanted to run through this league, coming back, giving some of my feedback on the list, some thoughts and opinions. We'll go through like the gameplay we see, but just changing it up. We've done leagues with like Blue Red Underworld Breach and Murktide, and we'll do leagues with some other decks that aren't Shadow, usually like off stream, because apparently everybody on stream likes Shadow too much. But if y'all end up liking the Hammer Time content, then let me know in the comments down below, and we'll try to add some more leagues like live on stream. Got some coffee too. But this is the list that Will Polium ran to the second place finish in a challenge online, like close to I think 2 weeks ago. But one of the things I liked about the list was like the two Spell Pierce and the two Blacksmith skill in the main. No copies of Midnight, which I don't mind Midnight, but I really wanted like the four interactive spells in the main. And then you could either go mono white with Hammer Time or splash blue for like Pierce, Reality Chip, Lavinia to Fairy. Realistically, I think like Spell Pierce and Reality Chip are the real reasons to splash. Um, Mana Leak's another option. This might not have been Polium's exact 75. The sideboard, I think, was a little different. I think he ran a couple copies of Mana Leak, where this one's running like the third copy of Lavinia and something else. They need a relic, Lavinia. The extra blacksmith skill on the board. So this was from someone else's 5-0 list, but based off Polium's. So close enough. We'll go ahead and get jumping into the matchups. But this is the deck list for anybody interested. We'll have it in the description down below. So let us pull up the first match. So like I said, I've played like a little bit with Hammer Time, so I know a lot of the basic lines, but when it comes to things like knowing when the best chance to go for it is or playing around specific interaction, I'm still like learning what is more likely to happen when. So we'll see how that plays out throughout the league. Let's make sure this is sized up correctly. A little off. There we go. All right, so we're on the draw. Got a hand with a Giver, Sigarda's Aid, Springleaf Drum. Typically, if you have a way to equip a hammer, it's a lot better than a hand that doesn't have the hammer or doesn't have the way to equip but has the hammer. So in this case, like I'm a little more likely to keep it because it's got the equips, especially like the Sigarda's Aid for turn one. And I can just find a hammer eventually and strap it up. Opponent moles to 6. All right, so Spire Bluff Canal. So I'm assuming like Murktide, which is a good matchup for Hammer. That's another reason that I'm kind of interested in this deck, having a good Murktide matchup. Which, if you see me on stream, Murktide is my absolute nemesis. So, opponent could have a copy of Spell Pierce here, but I think it's more likely that they've got a Lightning Bolt or an Unholy Heat. So I'm gonna lead on the Sigardazade and kind of assume like they can't interact with this very well, instead of leading on the Giver of Runes and letting my opponent play a removal spell. But then they play an Urza Saga here, so we know immediately it's Underworld Breach, even before the grinding station. And I don't want to just be dead to combo. So for them to kill me on this turn 3, there's several things that have to go right. They have to have a Mishra's Bauble or a what's it called? Mox Amber. They have to have an Underworld Breach itself, and that starts the loop. Um, but all that's going to do is get back the Mishra's Bauble and mill themselves out. That's not going to net mana. So they need to have like another mana source. And more than likely, the only way they're actually going to be able to kill me is if 4 out of their 5 cards are like Mishra's Bauble, Imri, Land, Underworld Breach. So it's a pretty low percentage, but it's not impossible. But because it's a possibility, and I'm not really doing anything if I just play Stoneforge and get Hammer. Like I can Stoneforge next turn, get Hammer, and still have mana up for Spell Pierce plus play the Hammer. So I think it's kind of free to just get this Giver and Springleaf Drum down and sit on the Spell Pierce instead. But with opponent not playing a land there, I'm kind of assuming that they don't have all the pieces they need, and they're just probably planning on like getting a Mishra's Bauble off of this. But now that I found the Stoneforge Mystic, I've got a kill with Stoneforge, or kill, not, now that I've found Inkmoth Nexus, I have a kill with Inkmoth next turn with a Spell Pierce back up. I decide to go for the Giver of Runes kill. That's fine. Uh, this Underworld Breach deck usually doesn't play a ton of interaction. It's like 4 Unholy Heats and a Lightning Bolt, occasionally Prismatic Ending. If they did find like a white source and wanted Prismatic Ending the Cigar's Aid, I could respond by hammering up the Stoneforge and at least making that a 2-turn clock. I also have the option of, if they decided to like Prismatic Ending the Cigar's Aid, I could hammer the Stoneforge, untap, play my land, play the Pure Steel, fire up the Inkmoth Nexus, move the hammer to the Inkmoth because I'd have hammer, Inkmoth, Springleaf Drum to give me Metalcraft. So that would be 2 for the Pure Steel, 1 to fire up the Inkmoth, move it over for free, and I'd have Spell Pierce up still. So when you talk about like the Hammer Time deck being extremely resilient, this is the kind of things that make it so. But I'm going to go in for the Underworld Breach here. So they could play the Underworld Breach, sack the Mox Amber to the grinding station, mill 3, replay the Amber, float a red off Ragavan, repeat the process over and over again. Eventually, they could hit a Springleaf Drum, play it out, play or use the Ragavan and Springleaf Drum to float blue, cast an Emery from the yard, or like sack the Springleaf Drum to grinding station, cast Emery from the yard, mill over some cards. Now their Mox Amber taps for blue. And after a few iterations of that and like milling out the rest of your deck, you get Thassa's Oracle. So we're just going to Spell Pierce this and go to our turn. Opponent doesn't even wait to see our hammer. They just scoop to the Urza Saga. But we just play this, animate Ink Moth, attack first, go through blocks so they can't block, and then flash in the hammer, target the Ink Moth, and kill him with one infecty swipe. All right. So game two, sideboarding is also something that I need a lot of work on with hammer. So if you see mistakes in sideboarding, feel free to point those out. I'm all ears. I think with this one, I boarded in like the 2 extra copies of Spell Pierce. Boarded out. Let's see. Boarded in the 2 Spell Pierce. Boarded in a Relic of Progenitus. Could have very well boarded in the March of Otherworldly Lights. They do hit Urza's Saga. Boarded in a couple copies of Lavinia to stop combo. And I think that's about it. Boarded out a couple Giver of Runes. They're not a very interactive deck. Boarded out a Blacksmith skill. So yeah, 2 Givers and a Blacksmith skill for 2 Lavinias, a Relic. Something like that. Probably a couple changes I would make to the sideboard, but a lot of it just depends on like what you don't want to lose to. Like I think Mana Leak and Lavinia are really good options for like the 4-color lists. All right, so on the draw, I've got like Esper Sentinel or turn one Sigarda's Aid. It's not the greatest hand in the world, uh, but again, it's got like the equippers. I just need to find something to equip onto them. But I feel fantastic with the opponent just like playing out this EE on one on turn one. Like that's great. I've got plenty of backups to Sigarda's Aid. And then Emery flips over 4 lands. So Emery not looking particularly fantastic. And they're just going to start trying to loop EE with Emery. But because I've got this blacksmith skill, I know at any point I'll be able to save something from the EE. It's like if that's their plan, it's just to loop EE. That's a okay. Prismatic ending. My pure steel is fine. I've got a backup. So this is probably going to be the turn that I need to make something happen. If my opponent goes for like EE, blow up into turn, into untap, play E on 2, target my pure steel, then I could have some issues. Or I don't really have some issues because I've got blacksmith skill, but Ragavan's fine. It's like ultimately they've got 1 EE and they have to deal with permanents at 2, 1, and 0 CMC. So I think EE is going to be a little bit too slow. And with them EEing on 1 here just to like protect themselves from hammer and aid, like I think I'm going to be okay. And opponent just letting this happen means like, yeah, you're probably dead. You're relying completely on EE, and I'm just gonna blacksmith skill the hammer. The fact that blacksmith skill lets you target any permanent and give it indestructible is insane. Like, cool. I'm gonna blacksmith skill my Sigarda's aid, my Colossus hammer, my land that you're targeting with a pillage. Like, there's so much versatility in blacksmith skill that it is incredible. But either way, start off 1-0 against some blue red Underworld Breach. Going into match number 2. On the play, we've got Sigarda's Aid, Sentinel, Springleaf Drum, Hammer. So we have like turn 1 aid if we find a land, turn 2 Sentinel, Hammer, something like that. If we don't find a land, we can like turn 1 aid, turn 2 Springleaf, turn 3 Sentinel, hold up, Hammer. So it's like a little bit unfortunate that one of these pure steals isn't another land, but it's not the worst spot to be in, especially with opponent mulliganing to 5. Uh, so with them mulliganing so low, I kind of decided to go with the Sentinel. So if they try to interact with it, I get a free draw, and that just like I've got an abundance of creatures and equip effects. I kind of just want to find lands one way or the other. And Sentinel probably gives me like the most aggressive way of getting lands. And then figured I would try to go for the block with the Arbor Elf, like they wanted to trade with the Esper Sentinel, but they did not. I could have played Springleaf Drum here and held up flashing in the hammer, but I think if this is Ponza, this is going to be like a race situation. And if it's a race, I just really want to be on the aggressive foot. Also, could have gotten Hallowed Fountain there. Don't think it's like a huge deal. But here, now that I've got Urza Saga going and they gave me this third land, my plan is just like make construct, untap. Uh, Depending on what I draw, I can make another construct, or I can just float one, go get like a Shadow Spear, play Pure Steel, double strap up the construct, and go to town. And opponent plays a Goblin Rabble Master. Not on my radar. If they want to like bolt the construct, that's completely fine. And opponent concedes. So I guess they decided that if I just like make construct, because if I just make construct, get Shadow Spear, they're probably going to have a really rough time getting back into this game. So make a construct. This becomes a 3/3. Get a Shadow Spear, becomes a 4/4 with lifelink and trample. And if I just have like another artifact I can play, then all of a sudden this becomes like a forced chump. And it's not a good situation for them to be in. So, game 2 against Ponza. Sideboard wise, I boarded in. I boarded in the extra copy of Blacksmith Skill, one Sanctifier, just because of the pro red. Like the Grave Hate doesn't really matter, but being able to stand in front of like Rabble Master tokens, Chandra, season tack through season Pyromancer tokens, all that sort of stuff was kind of nice. The Giver of Runes, I feel like there's a sweet spot for Giver of Runes. Like you really want it if your opponent has got a medium amount of interaction. If they've got a lot, it's bad. If they've got none, it's bad. So somewhere in the middle is like, okay, my opponent's got enough interaction to where they have to interact with Giver of Runes, or it's going to run away with the game. But if they don't interact with, if they like save their one or two pieces for something else, then Giver of Runes is going to look really good. If they use it on Giver of Runes, then my other thing gets to live, and they won't find more interaction. And that's like seems to be from my experience playing against Giver of Runes when it's the absolute best. So I feel like Ponza is on the side of they're going to have a ton of lightning bolts, bone crushers, Chandra, uh, force of negation, or not force of negation, force of vigor. Um, what's it called? Um, pillage and whatnot. So I just feel like they're going to overload Giver pretty easily. Um, boarded out the Steel Shaper's gift just because they're not interacting with my hand or anything. So like once I find a hammer, I've got a hammer. I don't think I'm really going to need to get a bunch of copies of it. Boarded out a Springleaf drum just to shave off one of those. Then I brought in like Spell Pierce, the other blacksmith skill. What else? The one Sanctifier, the March of Otherworldly Lights to help hit like blood moons and stuff like that. And that's about it. Opening hand's pretty solid. Like I've got turn one aid or sentinel, turn two springleaf drum, other one hammer. I've got a turn three ink moth nexus kill if I want that. I've got blacksmith skill to protect something. So like I think this is really showcasing the power of this deck is just you've got some insanely like consistent draws. All right, so I will absolutely trade off this Esper Sentinel for a Ragavan because I do still have just like follow up kill with Ink Moth. Um, the biggest concern here is Blood Moon. So I was probably supposed to just get a basic plains off that first fetch. Speak of the devil. Then we are whitelisted with drawing the basic plains afterwards. Chandra's fine. All we really need to do is like that, find a creature. Once we find a creature, everything's kind of okay. Opponent plays this Utopia Sprawl. I kind of decide just to flash in the hammer right now so that they can't start a fight with Chandra. Like, my concern would be they down tick with Chandra. I go to flash in a hammer, and then they've got like piece of interaction. I respond with skill, piece of interaction, and I'm just like out of the game. So while they're down a mana and Chandra's activation is on the stack, decided to just go ahead and flash in the hammer. Like they can still have two pieces of interaction, but they're down on mana as opposed to if I just let them have like all four. Like it takes double Bone Crusher out of the equation, or like Bone Crusher plus a Braid, something like that. Opponent Blood Braids into another Utopia Sprawl. We say, yeah, that's a line you absolutely have access to. And then goaded Stoneforge Mystic top deck, so now we can just go get Shadow Spear. Like, if you don't think Hammer Time is the best Shadow Spear deck by a mile, then you're crazy. This is also why I include the card in like the Golgari shadow lists with Urza Saga, because all you're doing is replacing Esper Sentinel with like a Tarmogoyf or a construct token, whatever. But like once you strap up a Shadow Spear, it just runs away with games. Like there's not a lot your opponent can do to interact with it. All right, so match number 3 on the play. Double check the time. Got a tournament in a little bit. All right, we're good. All right, we got lands, Stoneforge, got Shadow Spear. We do not have a way to equip up a hammer. Uh, but I kind of think this is like too much good stuff to really throw back. Like, okay, I've got Stoneforge on the play that could get Cauldra. I've got Steel Shaper's Gift to get a hammer, Cauldra, whatever. Like maybe I Stoneforge and get hammer and they let it live. And then the turn after, if I find another white source or I have Springleaf Drum down, then I can just Steel Shapers for Cauldra, put it into play. I think there's just a lot of flexibility with this hand. Mono red Prowess. Uh-oh. I guess it could be red blue Prowess, but so I think there's a good chance the Stoneforge Mystic is dying, so I'm just gonna like go ahead and get all the stuff. So if they do decide to kill the Stoneforge here, I've got the hammer. If they don't kill the Stoneforge, then I've got Cauldra. But yeah, I'm pretty sure they're gonna kill the Stoneforge. Like, I could absolutely see an argument for, hey, play the Stoneforge, get the hammer, pass the turn. Maybe they don't kill the Stoneforge because they're just waiting for you to have like another or a way to equip the hammer and then they'll kill it. And like maybe next turn I start off with Steel Shaper's Gift, go get Cauldra, and then I've got Stoneforge to put in Cauldra before they can do anything. Um, that could be a line. But with Soulscar Mage, my opponent can also just like double bolt the Cauldra and kill it. So I don't feel like any line is particularly great. Anamorphose to Iteration. Like, luckily, our opponent's only showing one creature right now, so the clock's not that intense. But they do just have like 6 cards in hand. And I'm assuming they're holding up either like another lightning bolt, a lava dart, something interactive. Also, probably should have just like attached or gone to strap up the Shadow Spear. But I feel like if they're holding up mana, then they're going to be interacting. There's always the chance that they just draw me into a blacksmith skill or something. All right. So opponent does finally find some more threats. Fortunately, a lot of them. And we find Sigarda's Aid. So we can fire up Ink Moth and throw a shadow or throw a hammer on it. There's not really a lot I can do because they've got the lava dart in the yard. So like if I go for anything, they've got it covered. I could have tried to wait till next turn, but if they lava dart on their upkeep, this is 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 for the lava dart. Any spell is an additional 2. So with like 3 drawing up to 4 cards, I'm assuming I'm just dead. So this is more just like, hey, I can play something. Let's do that. Like, is this optimal? Absolutely not. Do I think there's any chance whatsoever that I'm surviving that turn? Absolutely not. All right. So sideboarding, brought in. What did I bring in? Took out some springleaf drums because like all my stuff's dying, so the extra springleaf drum's not doing a ton. Brought out an ornithopter, a pure steel paladin, kind of the same reasons. Like they've got so much instant speed interaction that going for like a quick hammer is probably not working. Going for a pure steel means they're like killing stuff as soon as I go to equip. Like I kind of want the first one. I don't really want an extra one. Boarded in the March of Otherworldly Lights, the Path to Exile, the Sanctifier on Vex, and then boarded out like the Pure Steel, Steel Shaper's Gift, the 2 Springleaf Drums, and an Ornithopter, and just kind of saying like I'm gonna try to exile creatures, just like buy myself a little time, and then maybe I'll find something as the game goes on. Turn 1 Esper Sentinels, about the best thing I have access to. Like, if I can get a redraw off this, it's great. And if they instead decide to go, like, play a creature on turn 1 like this, that is also fantastic for me. That means my Esper Sentinel's not dying right away. And I probably would have taken the trade in Esper Sentinel for the Channeler there. And here I'm just getting Cauldra because I've got this blacksmith skill to protect the Stoneforge Mystic. And if they do decide to go for some sort of interactive spell, I get to draw 2 cards and I can protect the Stoneforge. And they're going to have to try again afterwards. They might not have the mana to. So there's the Lightning Bolt. Really just waiting to see if they decide to pay for the Esper Sentinel, which they don't. And they have the second Lightning Bolt. Plus the way to get Channeler Delirium. So we're not blocking this Dragon's Rage Channeler because they can just sack Bobble, give it a Delirium. Like, ultimately, I'm not in that bad of a spot. I do have double Esper Sentinel. I've got March of Otherworldly Light for one of these threats. Get a little chip in. Don't really plan on blocking with any of these. Get to draw a couple more cards. I probably should have marched in response to the fetch, but I honestly didn't think they were just going to give me a free draw 2 more cards. So I thought they were just going to get like a tap Steam Vents or something and go to their turn. But ultimately, opponent deciding they're going to run through a bunch of resources. So play the Esper Sentinel first. So if they respond to the Stoneforge or something, I get to draw a card. If I play the Stoneforge first and then cast the Esper Sentinel, they can respond to the Sentinel with kill the Stoneforge, and I get nothing. So Shadow Spear here. And it goes for an Underworld Breach. Honestly, Breach is fine. Like, it's not. All they can do here is Mishra's Bubble like 3 times. So 1, 2, yeah, 3 times exactly. So I'm just going to knock out the Channeler to prevent them from being able to scry off those baubles or surveil. Sorry. I don't even know if it technically says yeah, it does say surveil. I can remember if it actually used the keyword or not. But I don't really care if they just have like a 5/6 soul guide attacking here. Because I can go to my turn. Stoneforge can put in Cauldra. I can play Shadow Spear and equip it. And just attack them for like 6 lifelink if I want. I can also just like Shadow Spear, strap up to something else, attack, like strap up to Sentinel, attack for 2, gain 2, and then Stoneforge in Cauldra at any point. Either way, as for Sentinel, goaded. On the draw, boarded out another copy of Ornithopter. And I think I brought back in. What did I bring back in? Something. The other blacksmith skill I had. Something came back in. All right. So another Esper Sentinel hand. We've got a Sigarda's Aid and a hammer. Stoneforge can get a Shadow Spear. So like, feels like a pretty solid hand. If I just go like turn 1, Sigarda's Aid, turn 2, strap something up. And I play out the Ornithopter here because I really want my opponent to like spend a removal spell on the Ornithopter and let me keep the Esper Sentinel. And this is like really good that they played Manamorphose on their turn because that means they're going to be tapped out going into mine. So I know that I'm going to be able to play Esper Sentinel and strap it up. Then next turn, I should just be able to Stoneforge Mystic, go and grab Shadow Spear, and then get in a big attack with the Esper Sentinel. Like, there's a chance they can kill me from 24, but it's fairly low. So I'm kind of okay with taking my chance here. Shattering Spree was not on my radar. Makes sense out of like basically a mono red deck. They take out the Shadow Spear and the Esper Sentinel. Kill my Stoneforge. They do get like a pretty sizable attack here. Luckily, we do have the March to take out something, but I need to find another creature to actually be able to get any sort of attack through. But if I do find like a Pure Steel Paladin, then I can just kill. Except for them having another copy of Shattering Spree. Get rid of the flyer that scries a bunch. All right, so here we're just make them have it. Like, I can't do anything else because if I pass the turn and try to like block with Ink Moth, then if I block, hammer it at the end of the turn, the hammer falls off anyway. So, and another lightning bolt. So that's lava dart, 2 lightning bolts. They scried over 1, double shattering spree. That's the 4th bolt. And we draw a dud. So, playing against mono red, 3 bolts, lava dart, double shattering spree. Probably too much to overcome, but it was close. And the fact that it was even close was like astounding to me because that seems like the kind of rollout that you shouldn't even remotely be in that game. But not only were we in that game, like we were just one missed card away from killing them there. Yet again, hammer time consistency. We got turn 1 aid, maybe Ornithopter, turn 2 Stone Forge. Go get a hammer. We're on the play. Like, if I want to get a hammer with Stone Forge, I can go get a Shadow Spear off the Urza Saga. So it's probably going to be too much for most fair decks to overcome. All right, so we got Zoo. I kind of assume that every zoo list right now is domain zoo with leyline bindings. But I know there are some zoo players out there still in the queues that aren't playing leyline binding. So I don't think it's just like a free assumption that that's what it is. All right. So they do have a Fury, evoking Ragavan, second Wild Nicottle. That's fine. So here, I think best place or best plan for us is to get like a sizable board presence. So we've got the Urza Saga. We can make a construct, but I think I want to get down Pure Steel, draw a card, strap up the Pure Steel. Like, I just don't think they have a lot of good ways of dealing with like a 12/12 Pure Steel Paladin. And if I get that out on the board, that means I can like make a construct, tutor up Shadow Spear next turn, and I'm just like winning the board race pretty sizably. If they have a leyline binding, that's unfortunate. But if they leyline binding and like take out the Pure Steel, then I've got a backup Pure Steel. If they go take, I don't know, take out the Colossus Hammer, I can get another hammer off Saga. So it's kind of leyline binding is good. I don't think it's game over here by any means. But get to Shadow Spear, draw a card, strap up a Sentinel. Let's hit you with a 13/13 lifelinking Trampler. And get down Esper Sentinel. So now I have like 4 artifacts. So unless they get rid of multiples, uh, they're not going to have a lot of good stuff to do. Also, could have gone And it probably would have been better to go Colossus Hammer on the Esper Sentinel, Shadow Spear on the Construct, so that I could divide up the power a little bit. So if they did have like a Leyline Binding, get rid of the Esper Sentinel, then I would still have a 4/4 life linking construct that could block. Like, I'm not really afraid of a race here, but I don't think giving this life link and one more power matters. So I think I should have just gone divided up a little bit. But either way, that is game one in the books against Zoo. Sideboarding. Couldn't really decide what I wanted to do. Spell Pierce felt really bad, so I decided to cut those. Brought in the Teferi because they're a very tempo oriented deck. So Teferi just like bouncing a Kavu or bouncing a Scion of Draco, I think can buy me some decent time. Brought in the Path. Brought in the two March of Otherworldly Lights. Just help ease off the pressure a bit. Opening hand, aid, giver, path, march. Like, I can deal with threats really well. I just need to find a hammer. But kind of like we talked about match one, I think. A hand that's got ways to equip a hammer but doesn't have a hammer is a lot better than a hand with hammers and no way to equip them. So. Decided to just ditch the extra copy of Sigarda's Aid to take out the monkey. Really don't want the monkey like snowballing mana on me. Kavu's fine. Need to find land. There we go. So just play giver, hold up path. Like, I'm probably not pathing this Kavu that aggressively. Unless they decide to play out another threat or pre-combat, in which case, sure. I'll stop you from filtering a draw. If they had just gone to combat, I would have let them have that attack. All right, and then kind of what we were talking about, like, hey, we'll find a way to get a hammer. Let's just get or let's just survive to that point. Keep our equipper. Scion hits fine. The old Neshoba brawler. All right, so decided to just go for this Teferi. Like, we can really, really slow down the clock by just bouncing something. And if they want to attack a Teferi, then I've essentially time walked them. Pick up a Leyline Binding. Exiling the Teferi felt like an odd choice to me. Like, if you want the Teferi gone, just attack down the Teferi, and then you could Leyline Binding like the Sigarda's Aid or something. Like, I can't do anything to stop you from killing the Teferi with the Brawler. Scion. Come on. All right. So I don't have much I can do, but I can at least like flash in the hammer, strap up the Stone Forge, and then be able to like March of Otherworldly Light, the Neshoba Brawler. So I'm dead to a Lightning Bolt or a Lightning Helix, something like that. So let's March the Neshoba Brawler. Uh, I decided to ditch the blacksmith skill. Uh, and I cannot tell you why. I think it was just so that I didn't have to tap off of everything. Like I didn't have to tap off the giver if I cast it. But ends up being a little bit of a moot point. You'll see. Or no, keeping the second blacksmith skill actually would have won me this game. Opponent goes for a hard cast, Force of Vigor. We go for blacksmith skill on the hammer, and then they've got a second Force of Vigor with the Neshoba Brawler to take out the hammer. So if I just tapped off of everything to March of Otherworldly Light, the Neshoba Brawler, take the 4, untap, drew the second blacksmith skill, then we would have won here by double skilling the hammer. But you live and you learn, and you get to go to game 3 anyway. So, but now that I've seen Force of Vigor, Teferi does look a lot better for me. Esper Sentinel less is good. They're like not casting a ton of non-creature spells, and something like Force they can just play for free and pay the 1. So I don't think Esper Sentinel's getting a lot of mileage here. Kept in 1 giver. Just because they do play like Tribal Flames and Bolt and Helix and stuff. And yet again, Hammer showing consistency. I'm really good at drawing Sigarda's aids, apparently, because I think I've had 4 or so hands this league with double aid turn 1, or double aid in hand. Let's throw that down. Turn 2, we can Saga plus Stoneforge Mystic. All right. So playing this Saga and the Stoneforge does leave me like really open to Force of Negation or Force of Vigor. It's like the 4th time I've called it Force of Negation today. It does leave me really open to Force of Vigor because I am giving them like a Saga and an aid here. If I didn't have the backups of the aid and like the extra land, then I probably wouldn't be so aggressive. I'd just play like the Hallowed Fountain Stoneforge. But since I've got the backup aid, I'm a little more okay with taking the aggressive line. It's kind of, if you don't have the Force of Vigor, I am incredibly far ahead here. And if you do have it, it's unfortunate, but it's not the end of the world. Now, again, if they have the second copy of Force of Vigor, then I probably just wasn't meant to win this game. If they have like double force, double green card, plus lands and a Kavu, yeah. But if they don't have it, then it does mean I just get to like untap Stoneforge for a Shadow Spear, strap it up, and that should be GG. So Stoneforge, go get Shadow Spear, and opponent scoops it up. So yet again, Shadow Spear MVP. On to match number 5. All right, on the play. I've played against this opponent a few times recently. I think they've been on something different every time. That first hand, I think just like super clunky, nothing going for it. Second hand, actually, let's restart that and talk about the mulligan decisions. All right, first 7. So we've got Hammer, Sentinel, no way to equip. We don't have any value pieces, like no Stoneforge to get Shadow Spear, no Urza Saga. Uh, we could draw an aid or Pure Steel Paladin, but ultimately, like, Ornithopter is not doing anything without an aid or a Paladin. Cauldra is not doing anything without a Stoneforge. We don't have like any of our utility lands. Pretty rough. This one looks a lot better because we do have like an Inkmoth Nexus, a Giver of Runes, a couple lands, Ornithopters, but it doesn't have a hammer. It doesn't have a way of finding a hammer. It doesn't have a way of equipping a hammer. So it's like a lot of air and really hoping that we draw something live. This is by far the best hand we've seen. We've got Ornithopter, Sigarda's Aid, Hammer, a way to find another hammer or a Shadow Spear if we need to race. So let's keep this. Just throw back the Cauldron and the Sentinel. Turn 1, get down Saga. Decide not to play out the Ornithopter because it's my only threat I can play at the moment. I don't know what I'm up against. Basic Island doesn't really tell me anything. All right, so here's a spot I think I messed up. Y'all can give me some feedback. My thought here is no companion revealed, basic island. I'm assuming I'm against Murktide. And I could like cast a Stoneforge here, go get another hammer, and there's probably not a lot they can do because if they play out like any creature on turn 2, I get to double hammer. If they play out a red source, then I get to play my first hammer and they respond with a kill spell and I get to play second hammer. So I think I should have just played out the Stoneforge here and gone and gotten another hammer. I don't think there's a ton that punishes me here. Otherworldly Gaze means this is likely Crabvine because of the basic island. Like Dredge usually doesn't play any non-red sources. And then flipping Vengevine, Prized Amalgam pretty much like confirms Crabvine, which is kind of funny because I played against this deck like 3 times in the last week. But that Otherworldly Gaze also made me think this is going to be like a race. So I really want to get to Shadow Spear. And it also made me think that they could hit Narcomoeba. So there's no guarantee that like an Ornithopter flying in next turn is even lethal. But if I had gone and gotten the second hammer instead of playing, or instead of doing nothing and then flashing in the hammer, then I could have had a lethal attack right here because they didn't hit the prized them, or they didn't hit the Narcomoeba. And then like here, I didn't want to swing Ornithopter into the Stitcher Supplier. I'm not getting any damage through. Let's pop out their Graveyard so we can see that a little bit better. They've got Gravecrawler. Got a board of Bloodghast. They did hit the Wonder in the yard, so all this stuff gets flying. Little bit ironic that my Ornithopter does not have flying, but my opponent's prized amalgams do. So, but at the moment, like we are hitting them back with an 11-11 lifelink trampling Ornithopter. So this is 4, 7, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So even with like a creeping chill, they're not presenting lethal on the crackback. Like a Narcomoeba is fine. That doesn't change the math at all. I hit over Haunted Dead and a prized amalgam. So we're in really rough shape if they get another turn because they can block everything and then like get back Haunted Dead and because they do have 2 cards in hand, they get back Haunted Dead. That triggers all their amalgams back. So we do gain a bunch of life. That's a plus. And I kind of think in a race situation like this, if our opponent's willing to throw everything under the Ornithopter, not kill it, we gain the life, then I don't feel too bad. But that Stitcher Supplier does flip over double creeping chill right there. So there's the Haunted Dead triggering all the prized amalgams. And then top deck a creature, which is like worst case scenario. So we had a combination of things here. One, their 2 discards to the Haunted Dead were 2 copies of Vengevine. They drew a creature, which means now they can cast a Grave Crawler, get back these 3 Vengevines. So it was kind of like a perfect storm of things uh, that lead to us losing this one. And since everything's got flying, all we can do is block like 1 Vengevine. We're still taking 8, 11, 14, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 25. So not much we can do there. But there's so many spots there. Like if opponent didn't have the double Vengevine discard, if they didn't top deck a creature, well, I guess they had a second Grave Crawler, so it didn't really matter if they didn't top deck a creature. More just like the double Vengevine there. But that's how she goes sometimes. Game number 2, sideboarding. Spell Pierce is really bad since they're like all creature based. I brought out the Giver of Runes, brought in the Relic of Progenitus. Um, what else? Relic, Sanctifiers. So it might have been just the Relic and the 2 Sanctifiers for the 2 Giver of Runes, a Spell Pierce. No, then I did bring out another Spell Pierce for. Oh, I brought in the blacksmith skill. The reason is their primary form of interaction post board is Assassin's Trophy, so they can interact with Sigarda's aid or any of my threats fairly easily. So reasonable hand here. Yet again, turn 1 aid, turn 2 like Ink Moth, Stone Forge, and we're just presenting a really good way of killing our opponent in multiple directions. Dark Blast is an interesting one. Crab. All right. So here I was thinking about Dark Blast. Like I could play the Saga, fire up the Ink Moth, attack, and go for the hammer. But I was kind of concerned, like, okay, if my opponent has a Dark Blast, then I really can't do anything to beat that. And I'm just like time walking myself for no real value. So instead, I decided to play out the Pure Steel here, and I did not play the Relic intentionally. If I played it out, all I'd be able to do is tap and exile one thing. So I'd rather wait till next turn when I can like tap or play out the Relic and blow it up. Draw off the Pure Steel, strap it up with a hammer. All right. And this Steel Shaper's Gift, um, pretty good. I can go grab a Shadow Spear, and opponent just scoops to that. So with them not having green mana, I'm not too concerned about Assassin's Trophy here. So what I'm probably doing is grabbing Shadow Spear, attacking with the Pure Steel, playing out Relic, holding up the Relic pop, and going from there. And like next turn, maybe I just grab another hammer off Saga, strap it up. But opponent wants no part in our shenanigans. So we get to go to game number 3. Hoping for the 4-1. On the draw, we see an opening hand. So we've got a hammer, Ornithopter, Springleaf, bunch of lands. Like no way to equip the hammer like we talked about. None of our hate pieces. So pretty easy throwback. Second hand, we've got Quipper. Esper Sentinel's like pretty weak here, especially on the draw. Ornithopter, Cauldra don't really do a whole lot. So we're going to ship that too. Third hand, though, looks really good. We've got Saga or Sigarda's Aid. Um, we've got Ink Moth, a way to go get a hammer. We can pretty freely just throw away like a planes and an extra aid or something. Keep the reality chip for strapping up the Stoneforge Mystic. Opponent, I'm assuming, was holding up Dark Blast. But they shocked in Overgrown Tomb and just didn't do anything. Then like, I think that's about the best answer I can come up with. Let's grab a hammer. Do in fact have a Dark Blast. They're just trying to get that in the yard and start dredging. I don't know why you would Dark Blast and then choose not to dredge it back. Like, there's no other real reason to put Dark Blast into your graveyard outside of I intend to dredge this. I don't go for the hammer there because I don't want my opponent to respond with Assassin's Trophy on my Sigarda's Aid. So I think I'm fine just like waiting and then trophying on like their instep or before blocks or something. Did have a double creeping chill off of that Dark Blast. So they're really good at hitting creeping chills in bunches. And yeah, like I said, there's the Assassin's Trophy. We've got a reality chip. There's another copy of Creeping Chill. So Creeping Chills for days. Here, if my opponent's got like a fetch land, or not a fetch land, just like any land next turn, and they eventually top deck a Creeping Chill, like whatever. But at the moment, all they have is that Dark Blast in the yard. They've got one more Creeping Chill in the top 46 cards. So I say the top, that's the rest of their deck. So I think that as long as they don't dredge over it like right now, that I should be able to find a few things to play here, get a board presence, and then Urza's Saga will help me get a Shadow Spear to start gaining a little bit of life back, put some better blockers out there. Got a few free spells, so the Esper Sentinel is pretty straightforward. The Springleaf Drum's essentially free with an extra spell, and I can still activate Urza's Saga to make a construct here. So the important thing is I do not want to get down below 2 blockers. And ultimately, like, this will let me have 2 blockers one way or another. We know that the Dark Blast is the only card left in their hand. So they're paying for Esper Sentinels. And I don't care about giving up this Stoneforge Mystic because I know I'm just going to be able to go get a Shadow Spear off of this Urza Saga. And that's going to, like, run away with the game. Like, I get to Shadow Spear up this construct, play the hammer, I could equip Reality Chip, whatever, doesn't matter. I'm just going to have a really big life linking attacking construct. And my opponent's, again, got a whole lot of, like, nothing going on. I think the only out they have would be to do something like top deck a Stitcher Supplier and maybe flip over like a Grave Crawler and a couple Venge Vines. Then we might have a game, but outside of that, I think we're pretty okay. So that's a little hammer time. Nice little 4-1. I think the entire league ended up taking like an hour. So if you're looking for a deck to really like grind Moto leagues, I think this is perfect. I need to look at more Hammer Time content and see when I want to be bringing in like Hushbringers and Lavinias and stuff. I know they're all great against the pitch elementals, but I don't know if I should be bringing them in like if I just see Fury against something like Zoo, or if I should only be bringing them in against like 4-color piles and stuff like that. So if you have any thoughts there, let me know down below. Otherwise, yeah, we'll be back to some regularly scheduled shadow content pretty soon over at twitch.tv/the_control freak. So I'd love to have you come around and check it out. Otherwise, hope everybody has a fantastic rest of their weekend or whenever you happen to catch this video. And yeah, stay safe, enjoy some good food and company. Catch y'all later.